Right, hi everyone. It is series 2 of Visibility in Action. I didn't think I'd get to say that, so really happy that the feedback on the first series was so positive. And I've wanted to change things up a little bit for this next set of episodes. So there'll be some, well, how do I put this, younger faces, shall we say, that'll be making me feel very old for the next few weeks, because there'll be things I don't know. All the jargon, all the language, I'm sure has changed even since I was younger. So there we go. I'm saying that. I have no idea how much younger than me Amanda is, so I'm just guessing. On that note, my first guess is Amanda Wacker, if I'm saying that correctly. Yeah, we've got lots to talk about, particularly about representation in academia. And the whole theme of this series is about people who are at those kind of earlier steps in their career, whether that be in academia or first job out in the industry. And really, we're going to be exploring, have things got better? What has got better, what hasn't? What does the industry need to change? And also going into some back to basics as well, because I know there's a lot of questions people might be scared to ask, frankly, and we want to make sure we cover off some of that and do a bit of education too. So thanks for joining, Amanda. Do you maybe want to give us a quick introduction to yourself, maybe to the research you're doing, just so people know who you are?
Sure. I'm Amanda Wacker. I'm a second year PhD student at the University of California, San Diego, and I work at the Salk Institute, which is like kind of connected to UCSD. So my lab, I work in the lab of Pallav Kasuri. He just started his lab up, so I'm the first grad student, and we're working on understanding how DNA interacting enzymes work on like a biophysical level. So it's a little more physics than my undergrad training, but I am really excited to get into it. We do DNA origami, which not a lot of people have heard of. It's basically taking a virus genome and folding it up a bunch to be able to make different shapes. Yeah, that's literally it, but it
Interesting.
sounds like a lot different than what it is. So that's what I'm working on, and yeah, I have like 3 years left. Outside of academic things, I do a lot of outreach. So I also have a podcast myself. It's called Triplicates Podcast, and me and two other students from my program, we basically wanted to do a school survival guide for PhD students who aren't coming from an academic background and parents maybe aren't in academia, and just help them through like the whole process and understanding what's qualifying exams, how do I rotate, how do I send emails, just navigating a PhD program without any familial help is kind of hard. So I do that, and then I also do STEMbassy, where STEM ambassadors meet, which is another kind of STEM representation show. I do it with Raven the Science Maven, who you may or may not have seen on Twitter,
All over Twitter.
and a couple.
Well worth
Yeah,
following
yeah,
as well.
she's popping. Yeah, she's popping right now. Love her, and we do it with a couple other women who are also, there on Twitter, and yeah, I think we're starting season 4 this year, so it's been wonderful, and that's why I really do care about representation, and I really see the importance of it, and I am so happy that you are letting me come onto your platform to share.
No, not at all, not at all. It's good to have you. And I think the big topic we have to cover today is
Mm.
something you raised when we were speaking, which um, I thought would maybe have changed in the last kind of 10, 15 years, but you forget these are universal problems for our community, and that's the idea of coming out and the anxiety with that. So if I go back to the very first episode that I released back in February, March time now with Henry, where we were talking about being in a commercial role, almost having to come out every day to different clients and choosing when to do that. For you, Amanda, in your kind of academic setting, you mentioned to me anxiety over perhaps being treated differently or the impact it might have from your supervisors or your seniors in terms of letters of recommendation or being able to move forward in your career. Um, so yeah, tell us a bit about that. I mean, how has that affected your kind of program so far and your daily interactions with people, do you think?
Yeah, so I think the biggest instance that I realized this was happening to me was actually in my undergrad when I was getting ready to apply to summer internships and then also to grad school. I was working in a lab, and sorry, I never mentioned my pronouns and my identification. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm bisexual to identify. And when I was in undergrad, there's also another bisexual girl working in the lab with me, and we would sometimes, like we're like the same age, we are in the same clubs and working in a lab together. Like we want to talk and like catch up. That's the only time we really saw each other.
Mhm.
And we would be scared to mention things like, oh yeah, I went on a date, which is like kind of fine. Like people mention in the workplace, like, oh yeah, like how was, you said you're gonna go out this weekend, like how was the date with that person, blah blah whatever.
Mhm.
And like I noticed we both of us would not mention like names or gender of whoever we went out with, because we didn't want the people above us. We had like our PI and like who's our boss advisor basically, and then another research associate over us. We were like kind of scared to say something, and then maybe they're like super against that, and maybe they're gonna treat us differently after we've been already working there for a year, or like
Mhm.
there are some letter of rec situation is obviously incoming. We have a lot of steps to move forward, and this is someone we're going to someone we're going to reach out to a lot in the future. So
Mhm.
like we wanted to make a strong relationship with that, and there's like a fear of ruining that somehow because they might hold some prejudice against what I do outside of lab.
Yeah, and I suppose there's a lot of things going on there to kind of unpack, and I think one of them is simply just fear of the unknown. How is this person going
Mm-hmm.
to react, and actually what a big impact that could have on your future as well. But there's also, and this is something that's come up in a few of the other episodes as well, and I think a lot of us, within the community talk about, which is that, do I have the emotional capacity right now to essentially come out to somebody, whether directly or indirectly, and have to deal with their response, or explain, particularly as a bisexual person, because there's a lot of, let's say, misunderstandings about our experiences, let's call them, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure that's, you know, similar, and there's differences being a bi woman to a bi man as well, which we can maybe get into. Um, do you think things have improved in that regard? Because it's certainly something that I know I didn't do at all in my first couple of years out of university, for example, when I was, working my way through the sales ladder, um, deliberately doing what you were doing and not gendering when I was having those conversations, the coffee break conversations that everyone has.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I mean, has there been any repercussions from that you've noticed, or was it fear of the unknown that has led to anything? Have you seen that negativity actually, in the open?
Yeah, so I was actually That's a wonderful question. And I was talking to my advisor about this because I was kind of scared to even come on here. I was like feeling like, oh no, like what if something happens to me, or like it's going to be on
Yeah.
LinkedIn, you're going to Google my name and then it's going to be there and then like it's there
I know.
forever.
It's a
And
big
I
thing
was,
being
yeah,
this
and
visible.
it's a big thing, and I I was talking to my advisor and he was saying like there's a change coming, and in 5 years there's going to be so much better situations for the community, and it's just going to keep progressing, and it's not going to be like it was 20 years ago. But the problem is currently, like my advisor, he's brand new, he just got here, so it's like that shift of like there's still people that have been there for 50 years, the lab next door, and like I don't know how he's like the president of the Salk Institute, and I don't know how he's going to react when I have a rainbow lanyard on,
Yeah.
because a lot of people sometimes feel like, oh, it's okay to be gay, but like be gay in private, like you can't,
Yes.
I don't put it in my face. And that's like, I don't know, that's not the solution, and that's not how you make people feel comfortable and like they can feel safe in the space. And I think another thing is not just repercussions from people above you, but also like isolation from your peers as well. Because, yeah, some people are cool with it, but some people, especially my age, are not. And like to be targeted or to have exclusionary actions against you just because you're gay or into women or whatever is like, I don't know, it's like it doesn't make it a place I want to go back to. And then you lose individuals
Yeah.
that are smart and brilliant and can do so much for science just because the environment is not healthy and happy.
Yeah. No, no, completely. And actually, one of the previous, episodes with Clara Barker at Oxford University, she leads one of the labs there and was saying very similar things about dropout rate from from the LGBT plus community for exactly those reasons. And I think, particularly in academia or people who are in the early stages of their career out in the commercial world, are at an age where, that's where people are exploring their identity, for want of a better word. And
Mm-hmm.
if those safe spaces aren't available, all you're doing is kind of detracting people from remaining in the industry, but also just from being their best selves as well. It's it's a huge thing to be able to be fully open, I think, in the workplace, whatever that workplace might be. And you talked earlier
Yeah.
about your one of your lab partners, kind of the two of you having these kind of ungendered conversations. And if you can't literally have an open conversation about what you were doing at the weekend, then surely that proves why that whole ask, don't tell sort of situation that you mentioned, Amanda, is not the way it should be.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
And
no, you
it's
summed it up
like,
pretty well.
yeah, I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about it, especially like the last week. And I've been, I was, like I said, I was talking to my advisor and I was like, I don't know, this is like all the reasons I think this is important and I'm nervous about it. And like, I had never really come out to him either. I have my rainbow lanyard on and you do with that what you will and we move on.
Yeah.
And like, you can make your decision on whether or not I'm an ally or whatever. I'm going to leave that up to you. But like, it was my first time like directly telling my boss, like, hey, gay people, like LGBTQ people, like we are scared and like what are we going to do about it?
Mhm.
And he was like, he like wanted to help and wanted to be like, okay, like how can I make sure that you feel comfortable here? And like I told him the biggest thing even before I like when we were having the conversation about me joining the lab permanently, I said if anything ever happens to me, you have to promise me that you would fight for me, like you would protect me. Like cuz I'm a very small fish in a very big institute that has a lot of like a couple of people have sued the Salk Institute in like 2018 for um, gender discrimination, and there's
Wow.
like a bunch of stuff like that. Yeah, so it's like there's a history of I don't know of that's why it makes me nervous to be like, yeah, I'm out here, I'm doing what I want, I'm doing science, and like you better just accept it. And
Mhm.
yeah, maybe the younger PIs are cool about it, but I don't know the higher ups, the admins, and I don't know. I'm going to be there for 5 years. I don't want to be upset. Like, I'm going to be there literally every day almost for
Yeah,
5 years. That's a long time to feel like I don't belong somewhere and to feel like I'm being
absolutely.
excluded. Like, that is not the situation you want someone to be in. So we
Yeah,
need to make it better.
I totally agree. And I think that's why it's almost scary to be this visible, because it's this level of visibility that's going to help make that change. But at the
Yeah.
same time, it's a really big step to take. And that this project is all about humanizing, and educating, so that people maybe from outside of the community can hear these stories and understand the concerns and the anxieties, the real anxieties that people in the community have. Because it's important to make sure they're out there in the open, as scary as it
Mm-hmm.
might be, to do that. Um, One of the things I also wanted to talk to you about, we both identify as
Mm-hmm.
bi, and I
Mm-hmm.
think this has been touched on in previous episodes, and I was on a panel recently as well where we talked about the differences in the kind of assumptions people make about being a bi woman versus a bi man. And obviously, we're
Mm-hmm.
talking in very kind of cis-normative terminology there, but it's striking to me how few out bi men I see in the community. What
Yeah.
as a bi woman, do you feel you're treated differently to, for example, a gay woman? When you come out to someone, do you feel that people have those misconceptions? What were your thoughts on that?
I think yes, but yeah, that is an interesting question. I think compared to gay women, maybe, but it depends like who I'm talking to
Mhm.
and like their background or their understanding of the LGBT community um, or where they were raised or what stereotypes they hold. Um, Definitely, it might be more. It's like more accepted, but more accepted in like for the wrong reasons maybe.
Interesting.
Because it's like, oh yeah, you still like kind of like men, or like, oh, you'll probably end up with a man anyways, which is like 50-50 maybe. I don't know, like who knows, but it's just
Yeah.
like there's like maybe some hope in their eyes that you're like end up being whatever they consider normal. And I think
Interesting.
that is different, yeah, than if you're just a lesbian. Like there's like no assumption that, oh, you could still end up living a heteronormative life and like just be fine and no one will
Yeah,
bother you about it for the rest of your life and you're cool. But
that's
not everyone is able to pass like that.
yeah, that's really interesting. Do you think that that assumption is made by both men and women, that ultimately
Um,
that's the kind of relationship you'll find yourself in? Not that it's any of their business either, but
no, not that it's any of their business, but I think it might have to do with age too, or
interesting.
like acceptance of I think older people who are maybe like the whole like, oh, I support them, but like from a distance kind of
Yeah, it's a phase. It's a
feeling.
phase.
Yeah, so I feel like that is like what their hopes are. Is like, oh, it's just a phase, and like you'll end up marrying a man, and it's fine, and don't worry about it. And like I've even had my mom say like, I don't know, I like when my first relationship was with a girl, and then she was like, "Oh, I hope one day you'll like understand what it's like to be pregnant and like it's like a feeling like it's like she's like talking about being pregnant and like, "Oh, you're never going to be able to feel this amazing thing if you end up with a woman." And I'm like, "Okay,
Yeah.
mom, but like IVF, like it's
Yeah, still possible.
like science is a thing. Like don't worry about it. It's going to be fine." But yeah, like there's definitely things that they say that's just like, "Okay, like I'm not sure what
Yeah.
that has to do with me right now, but I'm
Yeah, it
glad
was a strange
you,
priority to have.
yeah, I'm glad you're thinking about my future, question mark, like whatever."
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? I think there are a lot of assumptions people make, and the "it's a phase" thing, I think, is something every single person who identifies as bi has heard.
Yeah.
Um, I think, and this is anecdotal. I don't know if there's any kind of research that backs this up at all, but I also think there is an argument that people make as, oh, it's a stepping stone. You're actually going to come out
Yeah.
as gay in the end, and I think that happens maybe more to men than it does to women. I don't know if that experience is different for you. Maybe the assumption people make is what you've explained, i.e., that you will ultimately end up in a kind of heterosexual relationship, um, which
Yeah.
probably comes from a similar place, of that misunderstanding.
I let me say something to you. I think I saw a TikTok, not to be Gen Z, but I think I saw a TikTok about this one, and they were like, the assumption for some reason is that regardless of if you're bi, you're like always gonna lean towards men because society is centered around like wanting men.
Mhm.
So I think that's like an interesting, gathering from that because it's like, oh, if you're a bi man, you're just actually gay, and if you're a bi woman, you're just actually straight, like whatever.
Interesting.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so that after I heard that, I was like, wow, that is actually something to consider. Like that's how society maybe like centers men in that regard. And I think another thing is what's interesting is the way you're saying it's a stepping stone. So I actually did the stepping stone backwards. So I was like, oh, I'm actually lesbian. That was like my first coming out. And then I was like,
Okay.
actually, that's not how I feel. And I'm open to more things than that. And that was, my mom was confused about that one. Um, yeah, so I think sometimes I think it just depends on the situation, but I have heard the whole stepping stone thing, and I think it is applied more to men than it is women. But again, it's because the assumption is that everyone likes men for some reason.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it. It's the male gaze, isn't it? That's what everything is focused
Yeah,
on. Not that it should be, but and I suppose as a woman, you've got the whole stereotype of, as you said, your mum focused on is, well, how are you going to create a family? As if
yeah,
there's only one way of doing that.
hmm,
So it's interesting, but
yes,
that's what, to go back to our previous topic. That is why it's so important, I think, to have open, safe spaces so that however people identify in the kind of LGBTQ plus bracket or outside of it can have these kinds of open conversations and talk about their relationships freely, their dating life freely if people ask about them, because that's how you remove some of these misunderstandings and these stereotypes that have grown over time but aren't actually based on any form of reality, I suppose, which is exactly why it's important to kind of forefront these questions. Um, Let me ask you something else then, because this is a very generational question, I think.
hmm,
And I have very
okay,
mixed feelings about it myself. I think you know what I'm going to say now.
okay,
And that is the use of queer as an umbrella term for the whole LGBTQ plus community. It's something over recent
yeah,
years we see a lot of people identifying as. Um, particularly people who might, for example, have affinity with a number of different parts of the acronym, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
more and more so, I'm seeing people who are gay or bi or just using it as an umbrella term almost to reach out to the rest of the community and maybe try and be a bit
Mm-hmm.
more cohesive. But it
Mm-hmm.
obviously has some really negative connotations. Um, and I
Yeah.
do see it as something as maybe the generations below me really is where maybe the change happens. I'm in my mid 30s
Mm-hmm.
almost, and it sits uneasy with me. I'm getting there. I'm okay with it, but at the same time, I've had it
Mm-hmm.
shouted at me too many times that it feels
Yeah.
really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on the phrase? Is it something you use? Is it something you're comfortable with?
Yeah, okay. I totally understand where you are coming from, especially the older generations that have had it, shouted at them and it was not a great experience. So it could be very jarring to just hear this word thrown about. I think if people in the LGBTQ community would like to reclaim that word, that is their business. I'm not particularly comfortable of like people not in the community using that word because of the history. It's like it's not a great thing to come out of somebody's mouth, I feel like. But I do say that also as so I'm also in a graduate out in STEM graduate chapter, and we have a seminar series for LGBTQ individuals in STEM to like share their research and also share their journey. So like you get a little bit of both and build community at our school like that.
Mm.
And our acronym is SQUAD, which is Scientific Queers something something something, and I think that like the idea was to use it as an umbrella term, but I also totally understand if people like are not entirely comfortable, and I don't think like some people do use it as an umbrella term, but I've had seen people that say like it doesn't feel like it encompasses like their particular identity in the community, which is
Hmm.
also totally fair and valid.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's another word that encompasses everything that is a bunch of acronyms together. It's a big thing to try to put
Yeah.
every category under an umbrella. And I think like it has gained popularity just as like a reclaiming of it and be like, no, this is like our word now. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. That is definitely something I think the younger people don't really think about of like how the older people feel just like hearing this word and seeing
Yeah.
it in like tweets and posts and stuff.
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic, and I think it's a big discussion point. I think in the community,
Mm-hmm.
and I totally agree with you. I think it's up to the wider community to say, look, yeah, we've reclaimed this. It's ours now. But at the same time, it is maybe not okay for those outside of the community to throw the word around in the same way, perhaps until it's fully normalized. Um, but again, I think it's a case by case, isn't it? If someone who you know is a completely 100% ally uses it, it might be so that they can feel closer to the community that they have, you know, tried to support. But it's,
Mm-hmm.
it's a difficult one, and I think it is very generational, as so many things are, in this subject. um, but it's something I'm keen. I think in every episode I'm going to be asking, similar questions like that because it's really interesting to get different people's opinions on this because I think everyone thinks slightly differently, um,
Mm-hmm.
and like with anything, in the LGBTQ plus banner, it's finding what's right for you, so that you
Yeah.
feel comfortable and you're able to say, yep, that explains me, to
Mm-hmm.
yourself, but also to the outside world as well. So let's finish up with what might be a huge question to wrap up in a few minutes. But
Okay.
I know I'm scaring you now. It's kind of going back to what we started talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Using your experience in talking about the anxieties of coming out in your undergrad, for example, how do
Mm-hmm.
you think, in this case, academia can be more obviously welcoming and open, um, whilst also accepting perhaps some things aren't going to change that quickly? What would have helped you in that scenario not have been as anxious to, you know,
Yeah. Um, okay, so I think words are really helpful, and like you saying explicitly like, oh, if you would like to bring your partner or like whoever you're or like, like, and not assuming like, oh, if you want to bring your boyfriend or if you want to bring your husband, like
Mhm.
choosing your words so that it's open and it's like you, like, I at least know you thought about, oh, not everybody is straight. Like I
Mhm.
feel like that helps a little bit to be like, okay, like maybe this is an okay place for me to say things, or an
Yeah.
okay place for me to bring my not opposite gender partner. Um, so I think that is helpful, and that I would love to see from people in positions of power and people like bosses and your admin and like there's a lot of, at least at the Salk, there's a lot of things where it's like they're supporting families and like people with children, especially like during COVID. There's a lot of, people need parental care, like
Mhm.
like parental leave, take care of their children, support for that kind of thing. So I think taking those images of what a family looks like, and it doesn't always have to be a man and a woman, or someone who looks like a man and someone who looks like what a woman,
Mhm.
society says looks like that. I think just, showing images of other than just like a cis heteronormative couple could be a big deal, and like be
Yeah.
like, okay, yeah, actually, the administration does consider that I have a family and does consider that I am as valid as any other family out here. And,
Mhm.
that makes me feel like I am supported by where I work and where I spend literally half of my day.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. I think it's a really good point, Amanda. And I think people underestimate how influential, language and images and things like that can be. And I think particularly as we're talking about younger generations, even people who are in their teens right now, working towards, going to university or getting jobs in the sector, statistically, many more are sort of identifying as, let's say, not being straight or not conforming to
mm-hmm.
kind of that kind of binary gender norm. Um, and
Mm-hmm.
there's so much talk you see all over Twitter, don't you, about people saying, why is this? It's indoctrination. No, it's because we're helping create spaces where more people feel safe to say what was the case all along.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I
Mm-hmm.
wonder if, generations coming up, even behind you, will start almost forcing that change because, you know, just statistically there will be more people who want to see that as it becomes safer for more people to be that open.
Yeah, and I will say, listen, the internet is a very good resource for the younger generation to find out that there's more than just being gay or straight, and there's all these other, sexual identities or gender identities or,
Yeah.
gender fluidity or anything that they are feeling. And I think just because that knowledge is available to them at a younger age, and, like, I didn't know any LGBTQ people out and open when I was growing up. Like, I found out all my acronym stuff from the internet. So
Yeah.
the incoming, generation, they're going to also find everything from the internet, and they're going to have it at a younger age, and it'll empower them to be like, yeah, this is what I feel like and this is what I am. And,
Hmm.
everyone older than them is just going to have to deal with that and
Yep.
accept
Catch
like,
up.
okay, they just have the words for this now. Yeah, like it's just
Yeah.
people just didn't know that this was a thing, or it could be a thing, and now they're like, oh, there's a word for this. That's how I feel.
Hmm.
That's me. And then they move on. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't mean we're indoctrinating anyone. It just means they have information available to them.
Yeah.
So,
Which is hugely powerful. I mean, education. This is always
yeah.
kind of the root of making improvements like this to help people, come to terms with their own identities and, create allies as well.
Hmm.
It's changed. It was YouTube for me. I think it's probably TikTok for most people now, which is something I have never looked at. I No,
It's
don't get
so
it.
good.
Don't get it. I think that one's gone past me. But then, having said that, I never even got Vine back in the day, and it's basically seems to
Oh
be a
no.
kind of recurrence of
Yeah.
that, and that was a big thing when I
Yeah.
was, in my teens and early 20s. So who knows? But that being said, I mentioned earlier I was on a panel about Bi Pride during Pride Month back in June,
Hmm.
and someone on that said all of the education they've been getting recently about the wider LGBTQ plus community and learning things they've never knew was from TikTok.
Hmm.
So it can be a hugely powerful
It's
powerful tool for everybody, I
yeah.
think. Maybe I'll have to start.
Yeah. And it's like it's great. It's like free and things like come up and like there's people who share like history and people who share like oh this is like how I identify and this is like things that I've had to go through. It's like YouTube but like a lot faster
Yeah,
videos.
it's not
So
just
like
people
there's a lot
miming
on
to,
there.
not just people miming
Oh,
to dance
just
songs. Then.
no, not just TikTok dances. There's a lot. There's a lot happening, but it also like it creates a sense of community, which I also think was a big thing on like on science Twitter. There's also a hashtag bi and sci, which like I went on and just like followed a bunch of other bi scientists, and it's been like wonderful, and it's been great to see like okay, yeah, these people are out and living their lives and doing great science, and like I can do that too, and I hope everyone after me also sees that like they can do it too, and it's like
Yeah,
you wouldn't have this kind of representation if you didn't have the internet. Like it'd be so hard to see all these people and see success stories and be like, okay, they like this is something I can do and I belong here and like it's wonderful. I love the internet.
yeah. I mean, that's a fantastic note to end on. I think it's so true, and that's why visibility is what really matters, because it can be as simple as someone seeing someone that looks like them or talks like them or has a similar background to them doing something that they think they want to do. That actually gives them the drive to say,
Hmm.
yeah, I can do that. And that's hugely important. And that matters within the LGBT plus community. It matters across everything we might call diversity. You know, it's really important to
Hmm.
see yourself represented. Um, so yeah, let's end it there. Thank you very much for your time, Amanda. And yeah, if anyone has any questions about anything you've said, I'm sure they don't mind, follow you on Twitter. That's probably the best place to reach you, isn't it? On
Yeah, follow
TikTok,
me on
I'm sure.
Twitter. I am on TikTok, not as much, but you can find me on Twitter for sure.
I'm definitely not on TikTok. Don't look there. But no, thank you, Amanda. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.